program tonight, I want us to focus on the subject of socialism this evening, and see how it is that socialism is established, what its purposes are, and why there are people in government, people in leadership that wants socialism to exist. We have behind us a clear record of what it does and the fact that it is the first step to communism. We have clear records through the past of what communism does and has done and is presently doing. So why would someone want to bring in a system that nowhere in the world has ever worked? When it has come to be, the nations, the people within those nations, has become poverty-ridden. Their ability to earn and to make, to prosper, is all but destroyed. So why then would someone want to inflict that upon society? Now, we hear a whole lot today about slavery, slavery being screamed on every corner. Socialism and communism is true systemic slavery. You are limited to what you can do, limited to what you can gain, limited to what you can say. You are then on a plantation. There is no question about that. In the communist countries, you don't have the right to the internet unless the government gives you specific rights that you as an individual can have it, which 99.9% don't have it. You don't have access to free information. You don't have access to free information religiously, in the secular world, or otherwise. You are controlled. That is what communism is. It is the control of society. You are told how many babies you can have, how many you can't have. You are told how much you can have for food and how much you can't have for food. That is what slavery is. And if you want to see systemic slavery worldwide, here and now, then you look to the socialist or the communist countries, because that's where it is. That's where the people are herded up and controlled. This is not a matter of opinion. We don't deal much with opinion here. For those of you who's watched the programs over the year, you see I never bring accusation against others, if I like them or if I don't like them. We never bring accusations against others until I can show you them doing it, till I can show you them saying it. Then it cannot be refuted. I have no desire whatsoever to slander anybody. There's recent statements that's come out against the Pope that he has said there is no hell. I hadn't heard him say that, so I don't talk about that. We don't deal with that. That is what you call being honest and being fair. It's void of opinion. When the fact is laid before you, then it cannot be denied. And that's what this ministry has been about. I desire to slander nobody, to degrade nobody for any benefit to myself whatsoever. It is evil, that is of the devil, and I'll have no part of it. Saying that, I'm telling you that communism is not my opinion what it does, the effects that it has on people. Communism is something that has been seen. The 8-hour bread lines for those who voted it in. Venezuela, starving to death right now and killing one another over quality garbage to eat. This was one of the wealthiest nations on the face of this earth until the socialists got a hold to it. And now they are fighting for the best garbage to eat, literally. It's what it does. It's what it's always done. What then is the reason and the cause for it? How could anyone assume in leadership that looking at what every pattern historically of communism has done, how could anybody possibly think that this is the way to go? How could they possibly stand now that we have worldwide television, Now that we have YouTube and Google, to where every one of us, every one of you can Google all the information up. You can even go to the cities and the states and the nations and look at them eating their literal mud cookies. Cookies made out of the mud of the ground. And Americans over here screaming about poverty. While you got an automobile, live in an air-conditioned home, got more than one television as an average to those that live in poverty. These people in these communist countries are eating dirt, literally eating dirt. Why then would anybody want to bring socialism as you see today? The Democratic Party in the United States, pro-socialist. The socialist countries of the world, they went and hugged their necks and loved them. It was Barack Obama in Venezuela with Chavez hugging on him. How can you be someone screaming for the freedom of your people, while at the same time you hug and go to Cuba and embrace Fidel Castro, who's got his entire population in a prison on their own island? Now, there's something that's not being seen. And what it is revolves around this passage of Scripture. The Bible tells us that the love of money is the root of all evil. Now, for just a second, let's focus in on the passage. The root is what gives life. The passage is talking about the tree of evil. It's talking about the ways of evil. It's talking about the evil. It's talking about the life of evil. The root of all evil, not some, but the root of all evil is the love of money. So the life, as much as the root of a tree contains its life, you want to kill the tree for good? Kill the tree forever? Well, as John said, lay the axe to the root of the tree, and the tree's gone for good. It is the life of the tree. The love of money is the root, the life of all evil. Now, not money. It did not say money is the root of all evil. It said the love of money is the root of all evil. When you have someone who loves money, there is nothing they will not do to get it. So then, coming back to the socialist and the communist, what is the only answer in the world for why anyone would want to bring in socialism or communism upon any people? Well, it can only be one thing, and one thing only. It can only be for power. With the power comes the money. The root of it is the money, because the money is what will produce the power. Now, looking the world over, we see something very, very clear. When nations goes into socialism and communism, modern day, the best example is Venezuela, literally starving to death, and was one of the richest countries in the world. What is it that causes someone to want to gain this kind of power and control? Why is it that the leaders of Russia, the now leaders of Venezuela, the leaders of Cuba, why are they not concerned with the state of their nation and their people? Why do they not care that they have been engulfed in poverty and that they have not the rights that a human being should have? It is because of the love of money and the love of power. You see, the socialist and the communist, when they take control and when they take power of a country, the state economically of that country, the economical state of that country, does not directly affect them. Because there is money coming in, and there is enough money coming in that all of those in the socialist parties that rule, they have consolidated all the money of the country, All the businesses are now run and owned by the state. You don't have free enterprise anymore. All of the businesses is now state controlled. That means that every business in that country is now run by those who wanted to establish the communism or the socialism. The businesses now become theirs. So all the money they could ever hope within this small group of rulers, masters, slave owners, all the money is now locked within that little small group, and they dole out just enough to keep you controlled and to keep a workforce. But if you notice, be it in Russia, where again, they promised the poor man and they promised the middle class, of whom communism seeks to destroy. But they promised everybody a fair shake, a fair square deal, and to give them more and to let everybody participate and to let everybody have theirs. And then when the Russian government got into power, hundreds of thousands was lined up in front of ditches and shot to death. Well, because not only do they take your businesses, but the communist always takes your guns. And when they take your guns, then they wind up lining, as is the case in every single country of communism. They line hundreds of thousands, in the case of China, multiple millions up with ditches dug out. They shoot them in their head. Now, they possess all of the power. They now rule and own all of the businesses. And if you'll look at something, you'll see it clearly. You'll see that where the Russians promised everybody a fair shake, that the rich, the mean, old, powerful rich was the evil ones, and we wanted to make everybody prosperous in this, everybody to share in the wealth. Well, the next thing you know, once the communists took over in Russia, those people that they sought to help and promised to help and to bring up was now literally standing in 8-hour bread lines. That is, they were standing in lines for up to 8 hours in a day just to get a loaf of bread. So much for the equality preached by these modern day slave-owning masters called socialist, communist, and Democrats. Yet the people in Russia, while the 8-hour bread lines was an everyday ordeal, the masters in Russia, those who took control, now has all the money, and they live in state-owned mansions. Their quality of life has not been reduced at all. The fact of the business is their quality of life has been greatly increased. For now, they rule the workforce, the people. They now rule the businesses of which they took from those who built the businesses, which was Barack Obama's fool statement concerning businesses. That just because someone built a business didn't mean that was his.
If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
You wonder just how ignorant a human being could be. But there you have a wannabe master. Oh, I promise you, a wannabe master. These socialists and these communists. Well, the people in Russia, as they had the 8-hour bread lines, the people in Russia was starving to death, literally. While those who promised them the world was now living in mansions and are presently living in mansions. They also had access to all of the airports and air forces. They had access to all the finest jets. They had access to the finest caviar, of which Russians are particularly fond of. Caviar. That ain't something that's on a poor man's table, for sure. But they don't share their caviar with the poor. Fact is, they don't even look upon the poor, nor do they concern themselves with the 8-hour bread lines that the poor is now standing in while they drink their wine, eat their caviar, fly around on their jets, and live in their mansions. Why would anybody want communism? Why would anybody want socialism? It is the consolidation of power. They get all the money, not some of it. With it, they get all the power, not some of it, all of it. So is it in Cuba. The people in Cuba live in slums. Poverty skyrocketing. And it always has, since the communists took it over, promising, as they did, as Russia did, promising the poor man his fair shake, promising the poor man his way up. We got to get rid of this capitalism. We got to get rid of this free business and this free enterprise and these rich people, these evil devils who want to oppress you. We want to redistribute the wealth, and we want to make you all prosperous. And then Cuba gets their communist government. And now you have to have permission from the government to simply have the internet. They live in dirt holes. They live in squalors. They live in mud. And these Democrats from the Black Caucus praises the one who produced mud for his people, while they condemn the country who's poor in this country. Has on an average of 2 televisions, air-conditioned houses, and at least one means of transportation, and all the food that they need to eat, except that they sell their food stamps for crack, when that's strictly upon them. This is ridiculous. Why do they want communism? Well, because it does not affect them, the ones that bring it in, the rulers, the leaders. You see, where the people live in the conditions that they live in Cuba, and where that is a fact, the masters and the leaders in Cuba, well, they don't live that way at all. The masters over the mud dwellers that they've created, the masters are once again drinking their vodka, drinking their wine, and in Cuba they're smoking $125 cigars. $125 cigar, which is more than the average wage. Here's what the average wage is in Cuba. But those who lead, those who inflicted upon them socialism and communism, are smoking $125 cigars, again, in their mansions, with access to flight to the Caribbeans and to the beautiful spots and destinations of the entire world. And they eat whatever they want. Steaks, followed up by the relaxation of a smooth glass of wine and a $125 cigar. The reason that they want communism and the reason that they want socialism is to consolidate power. Now, what I've shown you in just small form here this evening is what has gone on from the beginning of communism to this present day. It does the same thing in every single country. 20 years ago, Venezuela, the most beautiful country, fixing to become a first world nation 20 years ago, just 20 years ago. People whose babies, grandbabies, were born in what was fixing to be classified as a first world nation 20 years ago. One generation. They've watched their children or they watched their grandchildren grow up, and in 20 years, now just 20 years, this once first world nation is now literally, not exaggerating, is now literally killing one another over quality garbage to eat. 20 years. That's all it took. And the fall was going on from the day it started. Now you have the end result in just 20 years. Quality garbage. But the leaders, they still live in the mansions in Venezuela. Trust me, they're still drinking wine. And they can go get on an airplane and fly to any beautiful spot on earth any time that they want to. Why? Because the conditions out on the street in Cuba don't affect the ruling class at all. The conditions out in the street in Venezuela don't affect the ruling class at all. The conditions out in the street in Russia don't affect the ruling class at all. Now, we have within our country an entire party who by all means rules and has ruled, an entire party who are socialist, even a bona fide socialist, one who says he's a socialist, Bernie Sanders, who wants to bring in socialism and communism to our country. For what? To help the American people? To get you out of poverty? To get you out of a ghetto? To get you out of the slum cities? You ain't seen slums. You ain't seen poverty, and you ain't seen ghettos like you're fixing to see unless you dismantle this operation. Vote out this trash it calls itself Democrats, which are communist and socialist. Everything they do is what communists and socialists. Why do they want to do it? Why do they want to socialize all the businesses, the oil? What socialize means they take control of it. That's what communism does. Maxine Waters. And it's hard not to make bad statements about this lady. A woman who lives in a $4.6 million house, who is reelected by a particular district that is 96% black, but she lives in a $4.6 million home in a district where it's 98% white. When will your eyes ever open? They do not mean you good. What about Maxine? Maxine made a verbal slip. She's an ignorant person, very ignorant, and when an ignorant human being gets to talking too fast, they burn out the weak, pea-sized brain, and the tongue and the mouth starts saying stuff that reveals the true condition of the heart. Here she makes it plain. She wants to control and socialize all the oil companies.
What guarantees are you going to give this liberal about how that will reduce the cost of gasoline at the pump if we let you drill where you say you want to drill?
I can guarantee to the American people, because of the inaction of the United States Congress ever increasing prices unless the demand comes down, and the $5 will look like a very low price in the years to come if we are prohibited from finding new reserves, new opportunities to increase supplies.
And guess what this liberal would be all about? This liberal will be all about socializing. This liberal will be all about socializing. This liberal will be all about socializing.
We possess the power as the American people right now to change this country simply by voting. Now, to all of you who lives up in the woods and don't involve yourself in no voting, but yet gets you guns and arms yourself, which I'm all for 100%. But you should not be so willing to go fight when you still right now could change the whole thing by simply casting a vote. You have to vote, and not just for the president. If you vote for a president that you like, and you get that president there, but the senators and the congressmen are all against him, then that president you put in is helpless to do anything of major change. So you don't just vote for the president. You have to go vote for the Congress and for the Senate. And remember, if you're sick and tired of, let's say, Republicans who seem to say one thing and do another, but you don't like Democrats because you know what they are, then don't stay home, because then you vote for the Democrat. Don't go out and vote for the Republican that you don't like. Go out and vote for someone that comes from somewhere else. You don't have to vote for a Republican. You don't have to vote for a Democrat. Or you don't have to vote for the Republican that carries the status quo. Vote for someone who's going to help your president, whoever that president might be. But if you vote for a president and put him in, and he has a Congress and a Senate that is against him, you have done nothing. We have the ability and the power right now to change what is going on in this country simply by voting. You don't have to go to war and fight and kill one another. Now, when it comes time to fight, we'll have to fight. But right now, you still got the right to vote. For God's sake, come down out of your woods and vote.
Remember the one that talked to you when you were lost. He told you what to do. Remember the one that you leaned on when your world was ending and you were alone. Look back at that cross, brother, as you walk off. Look at the treasures you will have lost. A blood-washed family, your children and wife, blessed assurance, eternal life. Look at the treasures at the foot of that cross.